Next, we are asked to find the horizontal intercept and explain its meaning in the context of the problem. So first of all, let's make sure we understand what horizontal intercept is. So the horizontal intercept is the point where the graph, the line, crosses the horizontal axis. So in this case, it's not the x-axis. We're using t for our input variable. So we want to know where it's going to cross the horizontal axis here. So that means we want to know what t is when a is 0. So since we want to know where it crosses the horizontal axis, and that's t, we want to leave t in the equation, and we want to plug in 0 for the altitude. So in other words, we're figuring out when the altitude, when the height from the ground is going to be 0. That means when will the plane reach the landing? So we're going to go ahead and solve for t. We get time 8, or that the time is 8 minutes. So what we just found here is this point right here. And we're going to write our answers. The directions state to write our answers as a ordered pair whenever we're finding intercepts. So the time goes first, the altitude goes second, so the time 8 and the altitude we plugged in here. For the altitude we plugged in 0. So 0. So our horizontal intercept is 8, 0. And then we need to explain what that means. So we would say it will take 8 minutes for the plane to reach the landing. So if you wrote it will take 8 minutes for the plane to have an altitude of 0, that's great, but what is an altitude of 0? Show me that you understand that that means an altitude of 0 means it's on the ground, the plane. It's landed. To find the vertical intercept, we need to find where the graph crosses the vertical axis. So for a point to be on the vertical axis, I'm going to make up some points here. That ordered pair there is at 0, 3. So in other words, when the time is 0, what's the altitude? Now, one way is in this particular problem, it was given to us in our table. So the vertical intercept is 0, 1600. Now, if our table didn't give us that, or we didn't notice that, we can also do it algebraically by letting the time be 0. So if we let the time be 0, we would get 1600 algebraically. So that means that this, what we just found there, is when the time is 0, the altitude is 1600. So the vertical intercept is 0, 1600. So that means at t equals 0, so when the time is 0 minutes, the altitude is 1600 feet. So we don't want to say, I know in a lot of problems we would say initially, but we don't want to say initially because, as you could see in this particular problem, the altitude is greater than 1600. So the plane doesn't start out with an altitude of 1600. So we don't want to word it that way. But if we look here, it says that when the time is 0, that it represents right now the current altitude. So we could also say currently the altitude is 1600 feet because it tells us now.